Welcome. This video is to show our users how to create a sensor management plan, but also why it might be a good idea to do so. So to get into the sensor data, I'm clicking on the sensor itself, and now I have my graph. From the graphs page, if I go to edit, it has this basic data, but I can also put in a sensor management plan. So if I go to add new plan, this is giving me an overview of what this actually does. So it'll let you customize the way your sensor station data is interpreted through the growing season. As your crop develops, you may want to account for changing root depths and different crop growth stages that will require more or less water. So we have stages that determine how the sensor data is interpreted over a fixed period of time, which will automatically update throughout the different stages. So you'll provide a name for the stage, and you may have multiple stages throughout the growing season. You can also change the thresholds of what we consider to be wet or dry or okay, which I'm going to explain a little bit more later on in the video. Then you have your sensor depth weights. So as your crop develops, certain depths in the soil profile may be more or less meaningful for irrigation management. And these weightings are used to determine the average soil moisture content for a sensor station. So these weightings are making a difference in what you see from the front page, where we're giving an irrigation recommendation. So we can move these weightings around based off of the growth stage of the crop. I'm going to exit out of this, and then it'll take me right to stage 1 here. We'll just call early season, 0 days after planting, and I won't change the thresholds of what we consider to be wet and dry, but maybe I'll say that I'm only factoring in the 10-inch mark at the 20% of the total weight of the two sensors. Now I go to stage 2, we'll call this mid-season, and this is, let's go 30 days after planting, and now we'll say that this gets a little bit more of an input of what we see for the average soil moisture content. Then we'll go to stage 3, we'll call this 60 days after planting, late season, and now this almost has equal weighting as the 10-inch mark. And more realistically, this would be incredibly useful for probes that are going down to be 24 or 36 inches below the surface, where you really want to differentiate how you weigh these different sensors. So we'll call it, name the plan, and save. And now this management plan is put in place for this sensor. So I don't have to recreate this plan every time. So if I go into a different sensor, I can just go back and say, okay, sensor 29 has BK plan. We're also going to put BK plan on sensor 28, sensor 24, etc. And if you remember, we have these 3 zones of what we consider to be dry, which is the gold, representing the crop's permanent wilt point, the green, which is sufficient soil moisture, and blue, which is representing approaching the water holding capacity. So with a sensor management plan, there's 2 things that you're really going to change. One is this y-axis in what you consider to be wet or dry for a particular sensor or probe. The second thing that we would change would be the weightings that we give these different sensors. So I have my 5-inch mark and my 10-inch mark, and this color indicator here that it's green is giving me the average of those 2 sensors from its last reading. So for this instance, the 5 and 10-inch mark are both in the green. Obviously the average, or the two, will also be in the green. Where this really comes in handy is if you have a 24-inch probe or a 48-inch probe, and it could be the beginning of the growing season where you don't even have roots that are 48 inches below the surface of the soil. So it wouldn't make sense to base an irrigation decision off of that. And even if we are in the middle of the growing season, we still may not want our deeper root depths to have as much weight as where the majority of the roots are. This is from Dr. Wes Porter with the University of Georgia. And what he found is that based off of the different growth stages of the crops, he would recommend 80%, if D1 is your shallow sensor, to have 80% of your weighting in D1 during early season. During early mid, that would fall to 60%, mid-season 50%, late season 40%. And conversely, our mid sensors, so D2, those would gradually increase throughout the season, and then D3, the deepest sensor, would have no weighting at the beginning of the season and would gradually increase up to 30% by late season.